I'm going to quote here really quickly. But what if life is more episodic and circuitous than linear? What if instead of one career and one person, there are several that are right for us at different stages in life? Hello, everybody. This is Bradley Charbonneau here. I'm with Storyhouse Works, and today I have Erica Kaufman on the Zoom. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you.
And I thought I would just open with that line. I have so many passages highlighted from your piece, but that one, like, we are just jumping right in. So, to a little introduction. Storyhouse Works. We have here there's an anthology called Unexpected Gifts and Stories of Change. And Erica and I as well. Erica has contributed a piece to that, and we are going to talk about that today, as well as her experience with working with Storyhouse Works on this anthology and dig in a little bit more. I have some personal questions because I just read her piece and I have so many questions. And Storyhouse Works has some questions as to how things worked for you and how things went. So without further ado, Erica, could you give a little intro to yourself and then also how you got involved in this anthology, and we can tell a little bit about your story.
Sure. Where to start? So, I went out on my own to start a business about 2.5 years ago. And my business was really grounded in this idea of change and helping other
Wow.
people change. My background is in clinical psychology, so I've always been interested in people and this deep understanding of people and how they change and grow. And so when I saw the call for authors on the LinkedIn post from Hannah, I felt like this was an opportunity to tell my story.
Wow. And how did you find out about the anthology? Was it through Hannah herself?
Yes, she actually had a posting out there on LinkedIn. And so initially I thought it might be a great opportunity for a client of mine. And
Ah.
in further reflection, I realized it was a good time for me to date.
Wow. You have a lot in your story. You just said, "Oh, this is good for a client of mine." Like, "Oh, maybe it's good for me." I see a recurring theme
Mhm.
in your story. It seems like your piece, by the way, is called "Finding Meaning in the Disruptors." Oh.
Mhm.
And how, as far as my interpretation, it's almost, could you say, is it finding the silver lining, or at least part of it is finding the silver lining because here you are, you're here,
Mhm.
and you got through this gauntlet of challenges in recent years and are better for it, or at least have escaped, not unscathed, right? For sure.
Yeah.
But this, and you actually, I'm just going to jump into one of my favorite parts that I thought it was one of the most powerful. I'm totally going off of Hannah. Hannah has questions for me. We'll get to those. But I was really moved by the power and vulnerability of your piece. And you said at one point that you had this connection with your dad when you opened up about you were being really vulnerable. You're laying it out on the table, and
Mhm.
then so did he,
Mhm.
and then that brought you together. So do you? I mean, in this piece, here's one of my questions from Hannah. It was how do you feel about sharing your story with the world?
Mm. Well, it's definitely created some anxiety. For
Yeah,
me, I had to start with, I disclose a medical diagnosis of a family member. And so
yeah,
for me to put that out there, the first thing I had to overcome was, is that okay? Do I need to disclose this person's identity? How might that change my relationship with that person? And
yeah,
so putting it out there for others to read was involved more than just me. And so for guidance on that, I went to a few family members and had their advice and counsel. And um, in doing so, it also brought me closer to them, which has been another benefit of this project. Just the process of writing it and putting it out there and getting feedback from other trusted family members has really been just wonderful.
Wow. Again, I'm getting the recurring themes because you talk a lot about that in your piece as well. You're being vulnerable. You're because you talk a lot about you're American, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you live in the States. I'm American. I live in the Netherlands. But the that I don't know, for lack of a better word, like Tiger Mom or the this is the way, like you say linear. You say, what if life is more episodic and circuitous than linear?
Mm-hmm.
Because linear is like you have these great lines. You're like, oh, you do your school and then your job and then your marriage and then then you retire and then you die and it's this plan and if you don't adhere to the rules and follow along with the plan, what I thought was really interesting was you say like, I'm going to deviate from the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And like, hi, dear friends and family, I'm going to deviate from the plan. And friends and family, some of them are, we're with you. We got your back, Erica. But others are, whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean deviate from the plan? Your plan is just fine. What's wrong with your plan? You're going to mess up your plan. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought
Because
that was really interesting
yeah,
because
thank
of,
you. It forces, other people who are close to me, it may affect them as well. I mean, even just the process of writing it, the way I tried to tell the story was not linear because that was one of the points I was trying to make. And
yeah,
so I jumped around and a lot of what I learned in more recent experiences helped me make sense of earlier experiences. But that process of telling my story, when my sister read an earlier draft, I think it was tough for her because she had experienced my life with me in this, more linear fashion. And I think it was harder for her to try to grasp how I was jumping around.
yeah. Wow. It's really you tell from what I've read so far of different stories. You're really laying it out on the table, right? You tell a lot, and I'm just so curious about that. Like you said, it's a lot about family. You're telling a lot about your family, also your friends and your job and your career and your passions and your big dreams and how you're gonna change some of those. And you talk about like the coffee shop, lay it on the table, almost like literally lay it on the table. Sounded like with your mom and that went differently than the conversation with your dad. And you're telling this story. It's raw and no uncensored, to quote a show, but it's really vulnerable. And then you said also in your life how this opening up and this vulnerability and becoming, because you knew, I think you at some point you knew you were going to go public with this. And then, I mean, I don't want to say like then in tough times, then you find out who your friends are, but you said you had really different reactions from different people.
Mhm.
Is that accurate?
Yes, and I think in general, when we can be vulnerable, it can be galvanizing. It can really strengthen relationships. And I think when you're going through a change, the people closest to you may, in some cases, be invested in you remaining the same, or your changes
Oh,
impact them and they have to change too. And so that's why it can be challenging. And the people that I think a point that I even made was that sometimes the people that support you might be in unexpected places because of this closeness to all of what's happening.
wait, doesn't that almost seem like counterintuitive? That you'd think, no, but wait a minute, you're one of my closest friends or family, and aren't you like on my side? I want to make this change. Isn't this a good thing? No, no, I found it
Yeah.
so fascinating how you wrote about this.
Well, and sometimes it's messy and
Yeah,
um sometimes there's a lot of hurt and pain. And so
yeah.
for people closest to you to see that up front can be hard. And it just I think you don't want to see the people you care about hurting. And so sometimes
Yeah.
they have to put some protective distance in there.
It's interesting you say, hurting and you don't want to hurt the people. And because we could be talking here and you're like, oh, I have my company now and um my new life and my new plans and everything's great. Yay, isn't it wonderful?
Mhm.
Whereas like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Did you read the middle part? Like, did you
Mhm.
catch that middle part that wasn't quite as fun? To really have gone through, saying the word gauntlet again, but a gauntlet to get through this point. But I think that's part of your journey and your experience is this, you got to make these tough decisions if you want to move through them, it sounded like.
Yes, and I see this with other people that I work with. I mean, sometimes to the point about life is not linear. I
Yeah,
mean, it's like sometimes when we're stuck in the trough, and that's just
yeah,
it feels like it's never going to end, and it's hard,
yeah.
and it can be comforting to know that there is something better on the other side. And the tough part and sitting with that hard stuff only makes the growth, I think, more powerful because you've been in the trough and found your way out of it.
Wow. You just said knowing that there's something better, but I guess you can't be guaranteed there's something better on the other end, but you're gonna,
Well, usually there's growth.
yeah,
So what you do with that, I think, is up to each of us.
yeah, yeah. You describe things really well. You talk about was it really 3 hour? You said 3 hour commute, hour and a half each way, I guess.
Mhm. On
Wow.
most days, some days it was worse.
Wow. Yeah. You talk a lot about, it's interesting. You talk a lot about time. You say you did 9 years of school and a 3 hour commute. And I like how I'm kind of a numbers dork. And I kind of like using numbers like that because, I mean, just calculate that 3 hours of commute for how many days of the week, weeks of the month, months of the year, and years of a decade, right? How many hours of that is, in
Mhm.
traffic or whatever? It's a lot. It's interesting.
And what's crazy about your comment, so on Friday, I had an experience with my daughter. We were at the DMV where she was getting a driver's license, and this was like the most unorganized experience. The process took us over 5 hours, which is just ridiculous. And then on the way home, we ended up getting a flat tire and waited 2 hours for a tow truck and all of these things. And I posted about it on LinkedIn and it's got a crazy response. But my daughter's comment was, you've talked a lot about time. And what's
Mm,
so hard for me is like shifting from, feeling like I'm productive and doing and making the most of time to being
yeah.
okay with thinking about time differently.
Yeah. Wow. That's funny that just last week. Did you ever see God, it might be, is it, I don't know, is it Madagascar? I can't remember, one of those Disney cartoony movies. And they go into it's not the DMV, they don't say DMV, but it looks like the DMV. And at the counter, there's a sloth, the animal,
Yes.
right? And they're like, and they're gonna stamp something right there. You're like, come on.
Yes, I live
So
that.
good. It's so funny. How was the process of the writing and the editing with working with Storyhouse Works? Like, did you submit your work and then you got it edited? Did you get like the typical like red marks and comments and changes and stuff? How'd that go?
Well, it was very seamless and they made it so easy. You know what
Nice.
I had a couple people read it and they did a little bit of editing, but I felt much more confident about what I was submitting because of the editing that came back. And
Okay.
I appreciated that, yes, they caught grammatical stuff, but they also made suggestions that I felt like I could still push back on or, maintain the integrity of whatever I was trying to say or the voice I was trying to use. So it was a nice balance of polishing the work while also giving me some feedback to consider to make it better.
So for people watching this, because Hannah and Storyhouse Works, they're thinking of doing more of these. And like, what would your like you said you had a friend who thought about doing this, but then forget that I'm doing it. But the like what if somebody's watching this and they're like, oh, anthology, oh, what is this? What is this Unexpected Gifts book? And let me go check it out. And what did Erica write? Now I'm curious about all these things he told. Um, what kind of like would you have advice for somebody who feel like I have a story, I don't know what to do with it, or I want to, like most people, I want to write a novel. But then, as I say, as a writer coach, I know 99% of the population says, I want to write a book, and 1% actually do, right? So this could be an opportunity for them to share their story. How was that experience for you? And like, what would you say to potential contributors to a book like this, anthology like this? Any
Mhm.
advice?
Well, I think part of my inner dialogue was, who would even care about my story? I mean, is
Mm,
there anything here that would be interesting or helpful to anyone else? So that was like one piece of it. And then the second piece of it was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it was the process of writing helped bring me so much clarity, helped me understand my experience with new insights. So I think to the first part, if there's maybe only a small piece or one person out there that might find something in here that's useful to them, it takes a little bit of the pressure off because you have a collection of many different authors who have
mm.
many different stories that if you read the book and my story doesn't resonate with you, but somebody else's does, then it's still a win. It's still valuable. So it did take some of that pressure off.
That's a really interesting point. You're right. The pressure of my book, just me, my story. Here you go, world. But here,
Mhm.
hey, I'm part of this group, and I hope somebody finds one thing. So, just for the record, you have definitely reached somebody. At least you at least reached me
Oh,
because
thank you.
it was. I mean, I'm going to share highlights with you at some point, but like here, I highlighted it a lot. And here, so you quote. I'm gonna do another quote here. What was her name? Duke,
Oh,
something
Annie
Duke.
Duke.
Annie Duke. Okay. So Annie Duke says you quoted her a few times. You say something like, I needed to hear Duke's reassurance. I felt immense pressure to persevere, to make it work, and to avoid the guilt of giving up. The pressure came from others invested in me staying the same. The guilt came from me. Duke's reframing of quitting as redirection rather than failure reverberated and uplifted me. Wow. There's
Hmm.
so much in there. Oh, Eric, this is really good. We were talking just before we hit record, like maybe you'd write more, but you have a lot to say. You have a lot of story to tell. I'd love to read more and see more. And also you're right. I really like your writing style, and I like that you're not scared to use what I call them fancy words. I call fancy words. Says the writer. But I like
Thank
that. I like when
you.
there's a little challenge in there. And you also quote a lot. I don't know, maybe in your work you do a lot of research, but you're quoting in other works quite a bit. And I thought that's really cool.
Well, that was one of the points of feedback that I got. And I realized as I went through the book that I was probably the only author that had like a reference section. With the feedback was not the tone I think that they were going for was something that wasn't necessarily like an academic paper. And
Right.
with my background, I had to tone that down a bit. And I think if I'm really honest, or maybe kind of hiding behind, the academic
Oh,
piece and citing
interesting.
others was maybe a defense. Um, so being able to, and the editor helped me, I think, not just put out what Annie Duke thinks and what her research says, but what was my reaction and how did that affect my choices?
You know, I think that's a really interesting topic because you are quoting a lot of stuff, right? And I think here I'm gonna skip to the end. I want to see how many things you quote. One, two, wait, three. Oh, only five. But well, five people, but then a few quotes each, right? But
Hmm.
I really liked it. I don't tend to do that. I was kind of inspired that you did it so much. And it's interesting, I can see it in your background then that you do more of that. And I thought exactly what you said. It's you learned something and it's your interpretation of what you learned, and now you're sharing with us that interpretation. And I think that's pretty cool, right? Because maybe um the Pink, I already forgot her first name again. The
Annie.
Annie Pink. Let's say, no, I said Annie Pink. Sorry, Annie Duke, Daniel Pink. Now I'm mixing up two people. The maybe I don't, maybe her words don't resonate with me, or her story doesn't resonate with me. But your story, I'm already in it, and then you bring her in, and you give us your interpretation of what you learned from her, and now I get your version of that. And because I'm already flowing along with your story and your words and your personality and your experiences, then it comes in deeper to me. I really like that you did that, and I think it's inspirational to others to for somebody like me who never quotes like that. I think it's that's actually kind of cool. And like you're saying, oh, I want to tone it down because I don't want to be too academic. So I just wanted to thank you for all of your quotes in there. They were really good.
Sure. Thank you.
You had one more. I'm going to quote again because
Okay.
Daniel, I love Daniel Pink, and I didn't know this book of his though. The Power of Regret: How Looking Backward Moves Us Forward. And you said here, Pink's exploration of regret. You because regret is like looking back, and I regret things in the past, where there's
Mhm.
like, um, is it anxiety or when are you like worried about stuff in the future? Is
Yeah.
that, yeah, I guess anxiety is worried about the future, and I guess regret or could be about the past. So he says his exploration of regret highlighted the distinction between action and inaction. According to Pink, younger people in their 20s experience equal regrets over actions and inactions. But as we age, inaction regrets become twice as prevalent. These findings further validated my resolve to act rather than risk regretting paths not taken.
Mhm.
There's so much good stuff in there. I even I use a Kindle often, and if you read a Kindle on an iPad, here's a little fun tech tip. If you read a Kindle on an iPad, if you highlight something, it depends on the version and all that stuff. Sometimes there'll be a share button. And in the share link or button or whatever, depending on your device, it sometimes Kindle will make this pretty little graphic that looks quite nice. And it has your quote and has a pretty, fonts and colors and whatnot. And it makes a little shareable graphic that you can share. So I will share some of these. And now that I'm saying this, I better do it. So I will, and I'll give them to Hannah and we'll share them. But I'll share some of these highlights I did of your book because it was, I just marked it up with yellow pen like crazy.
Oh, wow.
So, wow, what is this experience like brought you? Or, since we're done now, it's out there, it exists. What is anything changed or anything? How's the experience affected you, if any way?
Hmm. Well, it does make me want to write more. So I've
Good.
wondered if I take this and expand on it, if I go in a different direction. I have a couple other ideas. So, I'm still, I think, trying to figure out what's next and learning
Yeah,
a lot from what I'm doing in the moment. But maybe writing is a bigger part of this next chapter.
yeah. So before this piece in the anthology, had you written about this much? I mean, you've got a lot of topics, but
No, I had, I think, a question. Do I have a book in me? I like the idea of writing a book, and I had talked to some other authors and expressed my uncertainty and what would I say? Do I have something to say? And one person who published had said to me, you don't need the idea going in. You just start writing and you'll find the idea, which was really interesting. And I've done there were a couple, so I just started writing a few things, and this process actually brought together a couple different pieces that I had done
yeah,
in the recent past. So,
Yeah. Wow. I really like your idea of time not being linear. And also, I had a conversation this morning with a dear friend of mine, exactly how you say, like, this is the path we're supposed to be leading, and she's not following that path, and she's getting, friction from family and friends. Like, hey, what are you doing? You're not following the normal path. And she's like, yeah, but this is the path I want to do. This is
mhm,
the path that's gonna, like, I talk about my work, I talk about mind, heart, and gut decisions. And she's
mhm,
like, yeah, but this is a heart decision and a gut because I feel it. And she's like, I know it's not the normal thing to do. I know it's not the most rational, logical thing to do. I know that. And I'm going to pay the mind price. I know. And I don't care because the
mhm,
heart is in the driver's seat for this particular decision. Other ones, the mind, oh, I got to pay my taxes or whatever. But this one, she's talking about being in Spain, and she's got to do it. And if she doesn't do it, then her heart is going to be disappointed, and her heart can fight off the mind demon. Or,
mhm.
and then it depends. Like, is your heart, what's the stronger decision making center? Or can you get them to agree? Can you convince your mind a little bit? I know it's not the most rational, logical, but let me tell you, let me give you my plan. So,
Yes. And that's so hard to try to reconcile and trust and know
yeah,
which voice to listen to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you talk a lot about your job and finally going to your your boss or whoever it was at that point and at the company and saying, like, hey, look, we need a change, and they ended up working with you to make it happen. And that
Yes.
maybe you didn't expect that outcome, right? I don't know.
It was better than I could have expected. And just
Wow,
another example of how people can support you in ways that you may not even realize.
wow. Okay, I think we can finish on that one because that's, I think, another element of this, right? It's people who can support you in ways you might not have realized, but then, like Wayne Gretzky always said, the puck you don't hit has a 0% chance of scoring. Or I messed up the quote, but you get the idea. Like the shot
Yeah,
the shot you don't take, has no chance of going in or something like that.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So, Erica, thank you so much for spending time with us here today. And I really, dear audience, if you want to read there's a lot in there. There's a lot of highlights. It's good. It's real. It's raw and vulnerable.
Mm.
And Erica put it out there for the world, for you, dear listener, potentially you to read. So go check out Unexpected Gifts and enjoy the piece from Erica. And thanks, Erica, for being here.
Well, thank you, Bradley. Enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks. Bye.